Hello guys, today we're going to talk about the recommended questions to ask to residents and interviewers during the interview session, and this list is coming from the AAMC suggested recommended questions, and I just have to say straight from now that none of them are actually good questions, and I'm going to tell you what I think, so you go from there. And I'm gonna give you my advice based on being an IMG, and I have to do this again. Being an IMG, being in the situation of looking for a visa, I wouldn't ask any of these because some of these questions may come across as very rude, very nosy, very confrontational. So in my position of needing all these visa sponsorships and trying to overcome low scores, things like that, I will try to be more conversational and more relaxed, showing that I'm more of a person interested on community work. So let's start with the first group of questions. Education. Is there an orientation program for incoming residents? That is a terrible question. Why? Because of course there is a orientation program for all incoming residents. What do you think, that they send them in just alone and just do your thing? No. Is there a formal didactic curriculum, and what is the structure? That's a terrible question. Do you think a residency program is not going to have a formal didactic curriculum? That's dumb. Next one. What are the informal learning opportunities? That doesn't sound good. Bedside rounds and other informal ones are like journal clubs. There's a better way to ask for that, but I wouldn't ask this way. What programs exist for resident education? That's what I'm talking about. Basically the same question. Lecture, journal clubs, grand rounds. So that one is a good one. Not all programs have a journal club. It takes a program that is very proactive on education to have journal clubs and lectures at the same time, because each of them have to be done in different days. Grand rounds, that's another day. And to really have a board review course in the facility to prepare the residents, it takes a very special program. So that's something you can ask. Is there a feedback structure that allows for the residents to evaluate the program curriculum? I wouldn't ask that, because it might come across like, are you looking to evaluate how we're working, how we're teaching, in your position of just coming to start resident? So I wouldn't ask that. Is attendance at regional and national conference encouraged? Is it funded? Anything that's related to money, don't ask. So conferences are part of the benefits that come with CME. Why? Because conferences need time, and this is time that you're going to be away from residency and working with your clinic patients. So it is encouraged to go to certain conferences, but none of them are mandatory, and usually the funds for that come from your CME money. So don't waste your time asking that question. What are the required rotations for the first year, subsequent years? Don't worry about that, because required rotations are going to be required. So why do you need to know that? That doesn't change things. Are there any required rotations that take place outside of the city? Be careful asking this, because we don't want a resident that has to leave the area and we are not able to put eyes on them, to make sure that they're really doing what they are supposed to do. A lot of residents get caught and they get terminated, they get in trouble. So I wouldn't ask that. Okay, next one. Are there opportunities to do away rotations? Again, in the position that I said that I hypothetically I am, I wouldn't ask that question, because anything that has to be on an away basis, it becomes tricky. So don't do that. There is one rotation, it's called the global health rotation. But sometimes once you do these away rotations, you have to give back time to residency, and no one wants to finish residency months later than others. Is there a formal mentoring program for new residents, and do faculty serve as mentors? That's a good question, actually. Why? Because Many programs do that they pair a resident with a faculty, one to one. So supposedly that resident or that intern should establish a special bond to that attending that faculty to bring up any concerns or any need for help, any conversation that may be difficult or they don't want to share to their seniors. The mentor faculty should be your first person to share those little things. Should be your best friend in residency. So that's a good question. Try to ask that one. Next one, research opportunities. I recently asked program director of a community program if research experience is important for her. She said no, not at all. But they do like little things like poster presentations, representation at little conferences, regional conferences. Those things are always things that boost up the presence of a residency program in the area. So a research opportunity provided to residents, is this a required experience? It is not. Research opportunities like experimental or big research is not mandatory, it's not required. What is required now is something called quality improvement projects. Think about that like something that can improve the quality of health of the community that you serve. So there's a lot of them in hypertension, diabetes, even washing hands. And now these are requirements for internal medicine and family medicine to complete one quality improvement project at least every certain amount of years. For family medicine, it's every 3 years. Even at my level of attending, I have to do one every 3 years. It doesn't take too much time, but if you come knowing that this is the word quality improvement project and you have researched that, then you may be ahead, because it's very hard to engage residents into working on this because they already have a very busy schedule. But if you know how to do it, you might be ahead. Okay. Is there a possibility of protected time for research? Don't ask anything that comes with the word protected time. Why? Because residency is a time that you come to work and work hard. So it becomes immediately a red flag that you are asking for protected time to rest and be able to eat. Find that time on your own. I'm not saying not to comply with the hours that are mandated by the ACGME. I'm saying that don't whine for extra time. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, so do it. And if you want research and you love research, do it on your own time. At least, again, that's on my position of being an IMG with a need for a visa and lower scores. And maybe also an older graduate. But if you're a stellar and you have great scores, you don't need any visa, you're great, just ask for anything that you want. They probably want you already. And how are fellowships handled? I wouldn't ask that. Fellowships are not something that are handled. Fellowships are something that you learn or earn. And sometimes if you apply at a community program, they don't have fellowships. So you may have to look outside to get one. And that's something that you earn. Next, teaching responsibilities. What teaching responsibilities for medical students are expected of residents? That's a good question. Why? Because we want to make sure that you are part of the triple threat of medicine, which is to be a clinician, a researcher, and a mentor. So if you have in your mind that you could be mentoring students, that's good ahead of time. If residents have teaching responsibilities, how much time per week is spent with the students? I wouldn't ask that. Why? Because you should know by now that if you have a student assigned to you, he's going to follow you for the entire rotation that they have with you. So if that's a month and you are on the service that is inpatient care service for 1 month, that's going to be every day that you are there. Is there any formal training for residents on how to teach students and other learners efficacy or how to provide feedback? That's a good question. Why? Because it's an art. The ability to provide feedback, it's an art, and we want to know that you can provide meaningful feedback. So this question is good, and maybe they will say, oh, okay, so he knows about meaningful feedback and he's interested in teaching, so this is a person we want. And they will tell you, yes, we have resources from like the Society of Teachers of Family Medicine. the ACP, you can get all the resources and learn how to provide, effective feedback to your students. Yeah, I will ask that one. Next one, resident performance. How often are residents evaluated? I wouldn't ask that. Why? Because you're evaluated all the time. You're evaluated on any rotation that you have. What is the structure of the evaluation? Forms face-to-face, I wouldn't ask that. It's always face-to-face. It's not recommended to do forms anymore. Although forms are still available, but face-to-face is one of the best ways to do it. What other forms or feedback does the resident receive? I will ask for this one because there is an in-training exam every year where you evaluate how are you doing, how you compare to your peers, and there is also face-to-face feedback at the end of your rotations. So that's a good question. What support structures are in place for residents in academic need? So this question should be worded in the way of what support structures are in place for residents in need of remediation. So if you ask for remediation, it means that you're not probably certain about your abilities or your knowledge. That would be a hard question to ask. Every residency program has a structure on how to start a remediation process, and it has to deal with also with your mentor, so your mentor will guide you through that. And then if you are put on remediation and you don't evolve in the right way, then you're moved into probation, and if not doing well in probation, you're put into termination, and that's a whole ordeal and needs a lot of support. So better to prepare to not to be on that situation. Next one, program performance. What is the status of the program accreditation? Okay, I want to make it fast. None of these questions here on program performance I will ask, because that's like you testing the program, and maybe some stellar students should ask these questions if they're if they have so many possibilities to match on other programs, but I wouldn't ask that. None of them. So I'm just going to move to the next section, which is clinical duties. This is a good one. I wouldn't ask the first one, what is the general call schedule, because you don't decide that. That's already decided. So it's going to be busy. That's how it's going to be. Next one, what provisions are made for backup call or sick call coverage? That's a good question. Why? Because people get sick, and usually the answer for this will be, this if someone gets sick, we usually send a group text and say who will be open to cover that extra shift at night, and that usually there's a good response. Some people say, I will cover, so people steps up for that. And next one, what type of structure or supervision is in place? That is a good question. I wouldn't ask that, because as a resident you need to be supervised in different ways. Usually is by presenting your notes, presenting your admissions, telling a preceptor how are you going to do things, or how are you going to treat a patient. So there's always some degree of supervision. It's residency, you're working under someone else's license, so don't expect to be independent and all that. Maybe some places do that, but not all of them. So risking to ask this kind of question in a place that you don't know what is their way, they're not going to tell you, and you might be on thin ice. Okay. And do your residents express that there is an appropriate balance between independence and supervision? Don't ask that. I already said why. How does the resident autonomy change as he progresses through the program? Only one way. They become more autonomous. They become trusted, and they can do things on their own. What type of ancillary support is available? Don't ask this. What do you think? This is Peru? Hospitals here have phlebotomists. Hospitals here have respiratory therapy, social workers, case managers. They have a person for everything there is in need. So don't ask these questions. A waste of time. Next one. Does the general volume of clinical responsibility support a balance between service and education? Don't ask that. Why? Because this is a place where you're coming to work hard, not to just live life. So don't ask anything that is related to you working less or having protected time. That's at least my recommendation. Don't ask this last one. Do your residents express they are involved in too much non-educational activity? Terrible question. You are coming here to work hard again. Next one, employment issues section. What are the basic resident benefits? You can ask that. That's a good question. Usually, hospitals have 401k plans already in place for residents. They have full insurance benefits, dental, hearing, all that is available. So that's something to ask. Then, is parking a concern for residents of your program? I wouldn't ask that. Waste of time. Are meals paid for when on call? Don't ask that. They're always paid. What is your family leave policy? Don't ask that. Is there reimbursement for educational supplies and books? Yes, that is a CME, but don't ask that. That's not a meaningful question. Are moonlighting opportunities available? If you're on an IMG on a J1 visa, you cannot moonlight. So just know that in advance, so don't ask that. What are the rules for moonlighting? Don't ask that. How are residents represented at the institution level? Don't ask that. That's waste of time question. Is there a union? Don't ask that. Is there a house officer? Don't ask that. Next one, questions to specifically ask other residents. Those are good. You can ask all of that. But now I'm gonna give you my recommendations on what to ask. And these are questions that were recommended to ask many years ago. So in this new era, in this new coming match cycle, if you want to ask something that can be meaningful and can show how well aware of the current situation you are, you should ask, what is going on with COVID in the outpatient clinic? So now doctors are not, even if we're coming back to normal, they're not completely back to normal. Now we are having to do office work and telemedicine. Office work meaning that patients can come to the office and see you in the office, but also those outpatient doctors, they are doing telemedicine work. So they haven't come back to normal. So as a new resident, you can ask, is the new way of doing outpatient clinic a combination of office and telemedicine, or are we back to full office patients now? And the most likely answer is going to be for the next 5 years to do a combination of office and telemedicine. Then what kind of interface are we using? How you can say in that part, how aware are you of telemedicine? How good you know that? Next question you could ask about recovery clinics for COVID patients, because all these COVID patients are complaining of weakness, shortness of breath that persist a year after having COVID, and there are established cardiac and pulmonary programs to treat this recovery phase of COVID. And these are called multidisciplinary team, and residency programs love that you use the multidisciplinary team. So ask, do we have an established COVID recovery clinic, or are we teaming up with a multidisciplinary team to provide care for these patients that are coming with sequelae of COVID? Next one, ask about palliative care. Seriously, ask about palliative care, and if you can do your elective rotations in palliative care because you want to deep in your knowledge of dealing with the end of life. Ask about tracks in your residency program, because not all the tracks are described on the website, but family medicine, internal medicine have different tracks like community work, women's health, underserved medicine. Ask about those. Don't focus on sports medicine. Why? Because everyone wants a sports medicine. So you should come as someone that wants something else that is in need, like community work. And is there any possibility? Next thing to ask is if there any possibility to have increased exposure to community work. Ask on those words. Is there any possibility to increase my exposure to community work? Like, are there free clinics? Can I be part of screening events? Can I be part of medicine committees? And they will love that. Why? Because no one wants to do that. Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.